The Chikol dreadnought dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Sol system. Captain Krass surveyed the alien ships on his view screen with a predatory glare. The humans' primitive chemical slug throwers would be no match for his particle cannons. "Target their flagship," he ordered. His weapons officer complied, locking onto the human vessel. Firing main battery. Bright lances of exotic particles streaked across the void, impacting the primitive human ship. But instead of bursting into flame, the sluggish vessel seemed largely unaffected. Krass growled in frustration. Fire at will. Wipe them from the stars. The Chikol ships opened up with everything they had, filling space with enough energy to boil a moon. But still the obstinate humans endured. Their ships were ugly, bulky-like things, yet they possessed some unknown means of resisting the Chikol onslaught. Krass was pondering his next move when alarms blared across the bridge. Incoming fire, his sensor officer warned. Chemical slugs inbound. Krass barked a contemptuous laugh. Our shields will brush aside such things. Maintain the attack. But his laughter died in his throat as the first salvo of human shells slammed home. Each primitive round hit with the force of a meteor, bursting through the Chikol shields as if they were paper. Explosions blossomed across the hull in dazzling plumes of fire. "Damage report," Krass yelled over the chaos. "Shields down 50%. We've lost auxiliary power on decks 3 through 7. Another salvo rocked the ship. "Direct hit to the bridge," the officer cried. "Main battery offline. We're venting atmosphere." Krass stared in shock at the damage reports pouring in from all quarters. How could mere chemicals wreak such havoc on his mighty warship? But the humans gave him no time to ponder. Their strange stone-like vessels pressed the attack, pounding his flagship with merciless precision. "Retreat," Krass ordered. "All ships, fall back." The Chikol fleet disengaged and fled, harassed all the while by human slugs. Krass slumped in his command throne, tasting bitter defeat. He had sorely underestimated these humans. Their throwback weapons possessed a power beyond science or reason. He would not make that mistake again. General Hogan studied the aftermath of the battle from the bridge of the UNSS New Jersey. Primitive as the old battleship was, her 16-inch guns had carried the day against the alien menace. He turned to his weapons officer, LT. "Reynolds, hell of a shooting, son. I reckon we showed them squints a thing or two about slug throwers." Reynolds nodded. "Aye, sir. Just point and shoot. Can't beat the classics." They shared a laugh, reveling in their unlikely victory. Hogan couldn't wait to see the look on those pointy-headed scientists' faces back home. They had insisted lasers and particle beams would be the future of warfare. But it seemed there was still room in the cosmos for cold steel and gunpowder. A few weeks later, the Chikol fleet reappeared, this time in overwhelming numbers. Hogan squared his jaw and took in the sight of the thousands of alien ships arrayed against his task force. "Looks like they learned their lesson and decided not to underestimate us this time. Billy, what's your tactical assessment?" His AI officer processed the odds. "I estimate we have a 36.7% chance of victory against these odds by conventional means, sir." However, Billy trailed off, his holographic form suddenly populating with old Earth ballistic schematics. Hogan raised an eyebrow. "You got an idea there, Billy?" "Yes, sir. I am re-examining Project HARP and other Cold War-era concepts. I believe I can synthesize a fission pumped slug thrower that will enable us to prevail. With your permission, General." Hogan thought for a moment, then grinned. "Do it." The Chikol Armada closed in for the kill, eager to avenge their prior humiliation. But their sensors soon detected strange radiation spikes coming from the human ships. Before Krass could react, the primitive vessels opened fire. But these were no ordinary shells. Trailing fire and brimming with radioactive fury, the nuclear slugs tore through the Chikol fleet like the wrath of angry gods. Ship after ship erupted in sun-bright explosions, shattered by the humans' doomsday barrage. Krass's bridge was awash in the blood of his crew as the nuclear shells burst all around them. Radiation ate through the hull and decks like acid. He stared in numb horror at the apocalyptic destruction lancing across the view screen. "All ships retreat," Krass croaked through blood and soot. "Get us out of here." The battered remnants of the once mighty invasion force turned and fled. But there would be no escape from the humans' planet cracking shells. One by one, the Chikol ships were overtaken and blown to atoms. From the bridge of the New Jersey, General Hogan watched the aliens' panicked flight with grim satisfaction. Once again, the primitiveness of the slug thrower had triumphed over technological sophistication. "We hold the line," Hogan said. "For now." But the next time he wondered if even nuclear shells would be enough. 3 months later. Captain John Ritter rubbed his 2-week stubble as he gazed out the porthole of the UNSS Armstrong. The ship hung in high orbit over Mars, part of an advanced expeditionary force ready to take the war to the Chikol. After reverse engineering Chikol ship systems from battle wrecks, engineers had developed primitive FTL drives for human vessels. Now it was time to start hunting the aliens in their own backyard. Entering Chikol space in T-5 minutes came the announcement over the ship's PA. Ritter checked his gear one last time: old reliable steel .45 revolver, 2 bandoliers of slugs, Bowie knife, and an atomic grenade just in case. He was as ready as he'd ever be to teach these alien sumbitches that you don't mess with Earth. The FTL countdown ticked away. Energy built in the drive coils, ready to tear a hole through space itself. Engaging FTL in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched. For an instant, Ritter saw infinity. Then they were through, the Armstrong emerging back into normal space light years from Earth. Alarms blared immediately. "Multiple Chikol contacts on intercept course," yelled the sensor officer. Ritter bolted for the bridge. "Evasive action," he barked. "And warm up the railguns. We're not going down without a fight." Despite the navigator's best efforts, there was no escaping the Chikol scouts. Ritter braced himself as their particle beams lashed the Armstrong's hull. But the ship held together, thanks to energy armor reverse engineered from Chikol wrecks. "Return fire," Ritter ordered. The railgun spoke, slamming dense metal slug into the Chikol ships at a fraction of light speed. 2 of the scout craft came apart at the seams, spilling aliens into the void. But the third evaded the railgun fire and continued pouring energy blasts into the Armstrong. Direct hit to engineering came the damage report. "We've lost main power." The bridge went dark, lit only by emergency lamps. The gravity cut out a moment later, replaced by sudden weightlessness. Ritter fired his thruster pack, launching himself towards the corridor. "Billy, take command of damage control. I'm going to settle this the old-fashioned way." Drawing his .45, Ritter flew through the drifting passageways and corridors, making for the breach in the hull. He emerged into a chaos of colliding debris and venting atmosphere. Through it all floated the squat, evil-looking forms of the Chikol boarders. Ritter slammed a new speedloader into his revolver and took aim. The aliens swiveled, bringing their particle rifles to bear. For an instant, the 2 species locked eyes across the void of the ruptured hull. Then Ritter's .45 roared, blasting the helmet clean off the lead Chikol. Its reptilian body convulsed in the grip of decompression and icy vacuum. Ritter kept firing, dropping aliens with each crack of ancient gunpowder. They returned fire wildly, beams sizzling by as Ritter rebounded off surfaces in the zero-G firefight. When the last Chikol floated dead and bleeding, its rifle slowly tumbling from its clawed hand, Ritter paused to reload. "You should have remembered," he told the alien corpses floating nearby. "Slug throwers rule space." He fired a burst from his thruster pack, launching himself back into the ship's depths. They had repaired the FTL drive just in time to make their rendezvous with the invasion fleet. And Ritter knew one thing above all else: slug throwers had unfinished business with the Chikol. The combined terrestrial invasion fleet emerged from FTL on the edge of the Chikol home system, railguns and nuclear slug launchers ready for action. Admiral Rogers stood on the command deck of the UNSS Roger Young, gazing at the looming Chikol homeworld on the main view screen. "Never thought I'd see the day we took this fight to them," he remarked to Billy, the AI at his side. "Think those lizards will know what hit them." "If our projections are accurate, the Chikol will be quite surprised," Billy replied. "However, the outcome remains in flux. There are many variables." "It was rhetorical," Billy Rogers said, smiling. The AI paused, blinking its holographic eyes. "Of course, Admiral, my apologies." Rogers laid a hand on Billy's flickering shoulder. "Just joshing with you. We'll get through this. We didn't come all this way just to be pushed around by a bunch of dinosaur men." Billy nodded. Indeed. My analysis of human history indicates your species does not respond well to being ... pushed around. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms sounding across the bridge. Admiral, we have incoming Chikol vessels on an intercept course. Here we go, Rogers said, readying himself. All ships, fire at will. Hit them with everything we've got. The harsh bark of railguns and the heavy thunder of slug throwers filled space as the human ships engaged the Chikol defenders. Nuclear fire bloomed across the void. Chikol energy beams raked the primitive hulls of the terrestrial fleet, but their sheer power was not enough to fully penetrate the anti-energy armor. The humans gave as good as they got. Their screamed metal slugs blowing Chikol vessels apart with every salvo. Rogers found himself grinning fiercely at the sight. These aliens had never dreamed the people of Earth could bring war to their own planets. Now they were learning just how ferocious humankind could be. Press forward, Rogers commanded. We're not stopping until we orbit that planet. The savage slugfest continued as the humans pushed onward. For now, the primitive throwers were carrying the day once more. But Rogers wondered what desperate gambit the Chikol might attempt when backed into a corner. Whatever it was, he and his crew would be ready. After all, military history wasn't the only thing humans excelled at. They also never knew when to quit. And Rogers was betting that would make all the difference in this war. The surviving Chikol warships fell back to regroup as the human fleet achieved orbit over their homeworld. Admiral Rogers stood triumphant on his bridge, though his grin faded as Billy spoke. Multiple nuclear launches from the planet. Rogers pounded his fist. Damn, should have known they'd try something like this. Can we intercept? Billy shook his holographic head. Negative. Too many simultaneous launches. Rogers set his jaw. Then we'll give them a taste of their own medicine. He opened a channel to the lead bombardment ships. Return fire pattern Alpha. We're nuking these bastards back to the Stone Age. A coordinated volley of nuclear shells rained down on the Chikol homeworld below. Continents burned under the human onslaught. But it was too late to stop all of the Chikol ICBMs. Rogers gripped the railing as the antimatter warheads detonated in space all around them. Each ship was a mountain, but they were motes against such fury. When the Armageddon blaze faded, half the invasion fleet was gone. Rogers pulled himself up from the rubble of his ruined bridge. Damage report. We've lost main power and navigation, Billy replied, his hologram form flickering erratically. But the FTL drive remains functional. Then we're getting what's left of our boys out of here, Rogers said. We'll have to rendezvous with the rest of the fleet back at Mars. Billy sent the signal, and those ships still able complied, tearing holes in space-time to limp home. Rogers took one last look at the ravaged Chikol planet below before making his own jump. You hurt us bad, he told the aliens silently. But we'll be back. With bigger guns, we had never settled for half measures. And Rogers knew that when it came to slug throwers versus particle beams, this fight was far from finished. The endless waltz between technologically sophisticated energy weapons and simple yet brutal slug throwers would continue. And Earth would never yield.